Welcome to Renaissance Academy. Today we are going to talk about or discuss a poem, Dust of Snow, written by an American poet, Robert Frost. Dust of Snow, this poem is prescribed by CBSE board for class 10. Dust of Snow is a very simple and short poem, but yet with deeper and larger meaning. In this poem, the poet talks about how the natural happening can brighten up one's life, right? So the poet talks about how the natural happenings, natural events which are going to happen in our life can have a larger impact, can have a positive impact on our life, right? So let's read the poem. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. So if you see the poem, in the first stanza, the poet talks about natural happening, right? What he is doing, what happens to him. He's talking about natural happening, right? But in the second stanza, the poet is talking about how that natural happening going to have larger and positive impact on his life, right? So let's discuss the first stanza. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. The poem is set in a scene where the poet is in a bad mood and he is walking by a tree called a hemlock tree. As you know, a hemlock tree is a poisonous tree. As the poet passes by, as the poet walks by a tree, a crow shook down dust of snow on his head, right? So when the poet was passing by a hemlock tree, right, so the dust of snow has been shook down on his head by a crow, right? In the second stanza, the poet says that the falling of snow on his head or narrator's head had changed the mood instantly. He had already spent his day in a bad mood, right? But the rest of it is saved by a crow and hemlock tree. The poet uses two negative imageries, that is a crow and a hemlock tree, in a very positive way. The poets want to say that one must not take things for granted, right? We take crow and a hemlock tree as a negative imaginary, right? As a negative omen, ill omen, right? So the poet is trying to say that we should not take things for granted and should be open and accept whichever way nature is going to bless us. So if you see a poem, right, there is only two stanza in a poem, right? So the way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, this is the first stanza, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. This is the second stanza, right? So in this poem, the poet uses a various figures of speech like alliteration, symbolism, right? Even inversion, enjambment, right? So these figure of speech has been used by a poet, Robert Frost, in this poem, right? So the poem conveys the message that one should never be sad, right, and hopeless. There is always scope for a change. There is always a scope for a positive thing, right? सो आपको पता होगा कि हम कुछ थिंग्स जो है, कुछ चीज़ें जो है हम एज ए निगेटिव थिंग करके एक्सेप्ट कर लेते हैं, बट देर आर समथिंग, राइट, देर आर समथिंग विच कैन चेंज दिस निगेटिव एक्सेप्टेंस इनटू अ पॉजिटिव वे, राइट। कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें होती है, हम बोलते हैं कि बिल्ली जो है वो बीच में से गई तो हमारा अशुभ कार्य होने वाला है, बट दैट इज़ नॉट द थिंग, वी टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड, राइट। हम उसे ग्रांट एक्सेप्ट कर लेते हैं, तो वैसे नहीं होता है, राइट। तो वी शुड नॉट टेक समथिंग एज अ ग्रांटेड, वी शुड be open, we should be optimistic about natural things, about natural happenings. That is what poet is trying to say through this poem, right? Okay, so let's discuss the rhyming words over here, right? We have crow. This word is rhyming with a snow. Crow is rhyming with a crow is rhyming with snow. May is rhyming with tree. Heart is rhyming with part. Mood is rhyming with rude, right? So these are the rhyming words. If we take into consideration what is the rhyming scheme of the first stanza, generally we start rhyming scheme with a letter A, right? So for example, if crow is the first word, we give letter A to the first word crow, right? जब भी कभी हम राइमिंग स्कीम के बारे में बात करते हैं, तब हम जो राइमिंग वर्ड्स होते हैं उनसे उनके हिसाब से राइमिंग स्कीम क्रिएट करते हैं. सो क्रो इज राइमिंग विथ स्नो, तो जो वर्ड क्रो से राइम होता है स्नो राइम होता है, तो हम उसे भी ए लेटर से इंडिकेट करते हैं, राइट. क्रो द फर्स्ट लेटर वी ऑलवेज स्टार्ट विथ first letter A, right, while talking about rhyming scheme, right. So crow जो है वो snow से rhyme हो रहा है, इसीलिए हमने crow को A और snow को A letter allot किया है. Me rhyme होता है tree से, me rhyme होता है tree से, so me is given B letter and tree is also given B letter. So the rhyming scheme of the first stanza is A, B, A, B. Okay, got it? So this is all about dust of snow, right? We also have various figures of speech, right? We find enjambment over here. Enjambment is a figure of speech where you do not find any kind of punctuation marks in the poem, right? We do not have punctuation marks in the poem. We do not have full stop, comma, right? So this poem runs through the line. At the end of the line